Okay, so today we're going to be talking about fractions, decimals, and percents. Before that, I'll go over like the homework and the homework answers.
等点，
So
好了
if
就这样。
anyone has any questions about the homework, feel free to ask. I know a couple people have kind of already asked me to go over certain questions, so I will be but for anyone who's done the homework and kind of wants to check their answers, these are the answers that, you know, like the just like flat out answers. Some of them ask to explain. And for the questions that ask to explain, I'll like explain it. But yeah, this is for anyone who kind of just wants to check, okay, what are the homework answers? I I saw that you guys did a really good job on the homework. I haven't really marked anyone's homework yet, but after this I will start. So I think someone asked me to explain both question 6 and question 7. So I'll just explain that while we're at it. So question 6 was that two numbers have a GCD of 4 and an LCM of 48, and one of the numbers is 12. So what's the other number? Well, the way that I intended for you guys to solve this was you can use the slides from last time, and they basically say that for any two numbers, their product is equal to the product of their GCD times their LCM, right? So then in this case, if we have something like this, you could have, so then we know the GCD is 4, right? So then 4 times 48.
你听得懂吗？
什么？
这里的都听得懂吗？都听得懂是吧？ Good.
Equal to the product of the two numbers, right? And we know that one of the numbers is 12, right? So then 12 times some other number is equal to 4 times 48. So the way I want you guys to solve this is I'm assuming you guys kind of know how to do something like this, where if you have 12 times a number equals 4 times 48, well, in order to find this number, you would want to divide both sides by 12, right? Because then you would have 1 times some number, which should just equal to that number. That equals
你坐着好，帮我续命啊。
times 48, and then divided by 12. And then you could either put this in a calculator, or you can just see that 48 divided by 12 is 4, so this just equals 4 times 4, which is how we get the answer of 16. So if anyone has questions about number 6, feel free to like raise your hand or put them in chat, but that's how I think the intended answer for question 6 was.
I don't have a question, but can you put the answers on the screen because I want to check?
Yeah, here are the answers again for anyone who kind of wants to check their work. And these slides will also be posted. So I know I might be going a bit fast, but if you need like to check them later, you can always go back to the Google Classroom and these answers will be on the Google Classroom. And we'll also mark on your homework. Just know that if I don't say anything on your homework, I'll mark them after this class because a lot of people kind of turn them in like yesterday or today. But if I don't mark anything on your homework, that means that you did everything right. But if I do mark something on your homework, then, check it, like double check your work. If you have any questions, again, feel free to ask. And then I think someone also asked about question 7. And question 7, it was just saying, given these, like, there's 3 pairs of numbers here. So given these 3 pairs of numbers, which of these pairs of numbers have a greatest common divisor greater than 1? So basically, we're just going to check all of these greatest common divisors, right? For this one, we can see that they're all divisible. Both these numbers are divisible by 5, 25 and 30. So that would mean that their greatest common divisor must be at least 5, which is greater than 1. So we know that that's already an answer. And if we look at 16 and 27, well, 16 is only divisible by 2, 4, even numbers. 27 isn't divisible by any even number. It's divisible by like 3s and 9. And 16 isn't divisible by 3 or 9. So that means that their GCD is 1. so that's not a choice. Then if you look at 24 and 60, well, we know that they're both even numbers, so they're already both divisible by 2. We don't even have to look at the GCD, but we know their GCD is at least 2. So that would mean that those two numbers, their GCD is also greater than 1. So that's why the answer over here is 24 and 60, and then 25 and 30. And then I'm just going to quickly explain question 8 because I think everything else is pretty straightforward. Again, if you have any questions, definitely feel free to ask because if this is your first time doing it, it's okay if it doesn't make sense. But I'm just going to quickly go over question 8. Kind of how I want you guys to answer this was like, the question says if a number ends in 0 and is divisible by 9, is it also divisible by 45? Why or why not? Well, the answer is it is. And this one we have to use the divisibility rule. If a number ends in 0, that would mean that it's divisible by 5. And we know it's also divisible by 9. And 9 and 5 don't have any common factors, which means if it's divisible by both 9 and 5, then it has to be divisible by the LCM, in this case just 5 times 9, which is 45. So it must also be divisible by 45. So just quick, does anyone have any questions about the homework? No? You're good? Okay, I think we're good. So then in that case, I'm gonna go to the Kahoot that we were supposed to do last time. I'll put the code on the screen and I'll also put the link in the chat so that, you know, we can do it, but this is really fun, so. Okay, so this is the link. So join it and put in the game code. And I thought this would just be like a little bit of fun before we kind of, you know, dive into today's topic because we were supposed to do this last time, but we never got a chance. So when as many people, yeah, Jessica, do you have a question?
I don't know how to join Kahoot.
Okay. Do you see the chat in Zoom?
Yeah.
Okay, do you see the link that I put in the chat?
Yes.
Just click on that.
Okay.
And then it should ask you to enter your name. And then just like so yeah.
I am just that okay so well I did come
Excuse me, I'm pretty sure there's a second Evelyn in this class. So I'll have myself put in as Evelyn W. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's okay. If there's like multiple name repeats, just put in like the first initial of your last name.
Thank you.
Okay, 15 people. Let's see. How many people are in this? Okay, so there should be 18 people. Okay, 16 people. So writing on 2 people. I'll just give you guys like a minute to log in. Because yeah. Okay, 17. One more person. You guys are doing great. Okay, so that's 18 people. I think everyone's in. So I'm going to start it. Also, just note that this Kahoot says, like, it uses the words GCF, which is referring to greatest common factor. If it says GCF, that just means GCD, like greatest common divisor. Those two you can use interchangeably. So just keep that in mind if anyone gets confused. Yeah. So it says GCF, that's just GCD. And then feel free to answer as quick as possible. It gives you a lot of time, but for time's sake, I might just move a little bit quicker. So yeah, pick your answer choice. These are both for divisibility rules and kind of like GCD LCM stuff. Okay. So answer and Okay, has everyone put in an answer? I cannot tell. But if you haven't, put it in quickly because. Okay, so the answers are 3 and 9. Does anyone have any questions about this? Or are we good?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, I put 3 instead of 3 and 9. Wouldn't they both technically be correct, or am I supposed to put both?
I mean, it's technically correct, but I think you're supposed to put both. And it was supposed to find, all of them given the ones that are listed. But 3 is correct. Just look out for more next time because there are multiple answer choices. Okay, I'm gonna move on to the next question unless anyone has any questions. I think we might just do like 5 of them, because they take a lot of time. Yeah. Okay. Good job to everyone who answered quickly and accurately, and it's okay if you didn't get it because, it's multiple choice, so it's really easy to like make a mistake. But if you guys understand, that's what matters. And then, yeah. So, possible. So, all of you guys answered. I think almost there. Waiting for 4 more people, or no, 3 more people now. Do 1 more person. You guys got this. Okay, perfect. Good job. Yeah. I'm assuming you guys don't have questions, but if you do, feel free to ask. And if you cannot see my screen, just like private message me and I'll give you the question and I guess the answers. So, okay. Good job to everyone who's on the board, and make sure that as long as you guys understand, that's what matters. Okay, I think we're gonna go like after this one, maybe like 2 more questions because time is like that matters, or like 2 or 3 more. We'll see. But again, this is like all divisors, so make sure that you do as many as you can think of. Now, of course, there's more, but out of the answer choices, what are the
Excuse me. So,
Yeah.
for my answer, I know it's divisible by, I'm pretty sure it's divisible by all single digit numbers, but that's not an option. So do I just, which one would I put?
What'd you say?
For my answer,
I accidentally hit the wrong number.
Okay. It's okay if you accidentally answered something wrong. Also, if you are not speaking, can you mute your mic, please, so that I can like hear what other people are saying? Okay, Evelyn, do you wanna speak? You're on mute, by the way.
My apologies, my sister. I was gonna ask, my answer is not on here, so do I put something random?
If your answer isn't on here, you can I would take time to double check your work to make sure that you added something wrong that's like possible or saw something wrong. But if elsewise, then yeah, just put something random.
Okay.
I guess.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, does anyone have any questions? Like, I can quickly explain some of these. Like, we can see that it's divisible by 10 because it ends in 0. 9 because you can add up all the digits, it's a multiple of 9. 2, it's an even number. 3, you can add up all the digits again. 5, it ends in 0, so it's divisible by 5. And then you can see that 6 because it's divisible by 2 and 3, so that means it's divisible by 6, because those are the common divisibility rules from last time. So, hope you guys remember those. And then good job to everyone who stayed on the board. And it's okay if you're not, but just make sure that you understand and know how to do these problems. And these are really good review because I think we're gonna have like some type of final exam at the end. So, good review for it. Yeah, this is prime factorizations. So the answers are on like an image. If you can't see the image, let me know. But otherwise. Four of them answered. A hint for this one, there should be 2 right answers. Obviously, I didn't make this video, but like based on the answer key, there should be 2 right answers. So you could choose either of the 2 right answers, and I think they'd still be right. Or no, prime factorization. So you have to actually factorize it fully. So there actually is only 1 right answer. You have to put it all into prime. That's your. Okay. 3 more people have to answer. Not this. Okay. A lot of you guys put B, and I'll just quickly explain why B is not the right answer. It says what the prime factorization is, and when we talk about prime factorization, that would mean that every single number in there has to be a prime number. And for the answer B, yeah, 2 cubed times 9, which is 8 times 9, does equal 72, except for the fact that 9 is not a prime number. So you have to simplify that. That's how you get D, which is 2 cubed times 3 squared. So actually is only 1 right answer. That was the trick question. But a lot of you guys got the right answer, which is good. And yeah, if you just want to know, 72 equals 8 times 9, and 8 equals 2 cubed, and 9 equals 3 squared. Anyone have any question? Okay, I assume we're good. Move on to the next question. Okay, good job to everyone on the leaderboard. Okay, this probably is our last question, only because we have topics to explain today, and I could be doing the Kahoot for the whole class, but unfortunately we have no topics. So if you can't see the question says, what is the LCM, or least common multiple, of 12 and 16? It's okay if you click the wrong one. This is not for grade or anything. This is just for fun. Make sure that everyone understands. It's okay. I also click the wrong one sometimes when it comes to Kahoots. Okay. Okay. It's okay if you click the wrong one. It's not for a grade, so don't worry about it. It's just for practice. I think this is going to be the last question we do because we have stuff to get through in class today. But 2 more people need to answer. Got this. is why you take your time to answer as well, because accuracy matters more than speed. So double check your answer before. It's okay though, it's totally fine. Don't worry, it's not for grade. Okay, so most people got 9, which is the right answer. Or pause. Or sorry, yeah, most people got 48, which is the right answer.
My thing said 6 for some reason.
Oh, that's okay. It's okay if like your screen is glitching or something is wrong. There's always technical difficulties. Also, it's okay if you left the Kahoot because this was the last question anyways, because we have stuff to do in class. But basically the answer would be 48 because again, we just take the highest like exponent for each number. So for this one, 12 equals 3 times 2 squared, and this one equals 2 to the 4th. So 2 to the 4th is the higher exponent, and 2 to the 4th times 3 equals 48. And it's okay if you glitch. It's totally fine. It's not for grade. It's not super important. It's just for review and practice. As long as you know how to do the problem, that's kind of the most important part. Yeah, we can do one more actually. But then if we do one more, that means that I'm gonna have to go through the materials fast. And yeah, so, but we can do one more if you want. But good job to everyone who answered, and it's okay if you didn't get it right. Don't worry. Do another problem. This is another one of these problems. What numbers is 13156 divisible by? So check. There's 4 answer choices. So look over your answer choices. They're very helpful. Not to answer too quickly either, because that can cause mistakes. You guys are doing a good job. Take your time. No worries. You guys have like
question?
Yeah.
So it's also divisible by 1, no, but I don't see that in the answer choices.
Yeah. So it's not gonna put 1 there because every number is divisible by 1. So that's just typically just not there as an answer choice. So when it asks, most of the time it's asking like what numbers other than 1 is it divisible by? And we're just looking at like the smaller numbers, right? Like we're not gonna look at all the numbers it's divisible by, but like using the answer choices, which one covers the most? That is divisible. Okay, 5 more people need to answer. Okay, take your time. You have 20 more seconds left, so don't stress. No worries. And yeah, this will be our last question, and then I'll get into the content. Okay, you guys did a good job. Yeah, so out of all these answer choices, you can see that 2 is the only number that's divisible by. It's not divisible by 3 or like 6. Since it's not divisible by 3, it's not going to be divisible by 6. Okay, unfortunately, we have to stop the Kahoot today. I wish we could do Kahoot all day long, but we can't. We can see kind of who ends up on the scoreboard. Good job to everyone. Also, good job to like Kamisha, Zoe, Chaitra, Anwita, and Samhita for getting on the top 5. And it's totally okay if you guys like glitched out or something happened. We'll do more Kahoots in the future, if you guys want to do more. So yeah, but today we're going to talk about our topic. Maybe next class I'll have a new Kahoot on the topic. But yeah, congrats to everyone, and you guys did a really good job with this. I'm gonna leave, and we're going to talk about today's topic. And okay, gonna go through this a little bit quickly. Again, we'll always have practice problems on the slides, even though we might not get to them. Yeah, Jessica?
Next time, can we do like a multiplier cutout?
Yeah, we can like do teams or we can do other like things if you guys want to do that.
Can we do Blookit?
Yeah, we probably can.
Wait, what is Blookit?
It's basically Kahoot, but there's different types of games.
Okay.
So I can show you guys that next time if you guys want, and I can kind of do that. So yeah, if you guys want to do that, you can do that next time, because might not. We don't have time this time. But I am going to introduce like today's topics, which is fractions, decimals, and percents. So fractions, decimals, and percents are actually very, very similar, which is why we group them together for one lesson. So we can start off with kind of a definition of each. So fractions are basically a number that represents part of a whole. And obviously here's the variable definition, but there's like an example which should make things a lot clearer if you don't know variables. And you can write it as like a divided by b, and let's just say a and b are numbers. And you cannot have b, the denominator, equals 0. And a is called, like the number on top is the numerator and the number on the bottom is called the denominator. And this is kind of the dash sign that you see is basically just a dividing sign. It's another way to kind of write it when you're not dividing by like whole numbers, like when you're dividing when the numerator is smaller than the denominator. This is like another way of kind of writing it. So for example, if you use 1/4, then 1 is the numerator and 4 is the denominator. And this is basically saying 1 divided by 4, which is 4. So then decimals are kind of similar to fractions. A decimal is kind of a fraction whose denominator is like a power of 10 and whose numerator is expressed by figures placed to the right of the decimal. So what does this mean? Like if we look at this, 1/4 in decimals is 0.25. There's always going to be that point there. And the whole power of 10 thing, if that doesn't make sense, is totally okay. Just know that decimals, there's that point there. And yeah. So percentages are like a ratio out of 100. Like percent literally means per 100. So for example, like 1/4 equals 25%. Because, 1/4 of 100, if you split 100 into 4 pieces, equal pieces, then you get 4 25s. So 25% is 1/4. Anyone have any question kind of about decimals, percentage, fractions? And it's okay if you do, it's also okay if you don't. Okay, Joanna?
Are we gonna be learning about like fraction, decimal, like what type? Like, are we gonna learn multiplying or just like we're just gonna learn those 3 things?
We're gonna learn those 3 things, and then later I'm gonna have some kind of word problems that will introduce you to multiplying them.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, I think we're good. Yeah, Zoe?
So this isn't
Yep.
really a question, but are we allowed to use a calculator in this class?
Yeah, so I think for today, I'm gonna say try to stay away from calculators, but if there are any numbers that I think are weird or too hard to do, then I'll just tell you guys if you're allowed to.
Okay.
I think we can move on. Okay, so some important notes is that fractions, decimals, and percents are all kind of ways of expressing like ratios or dividing. And it's really easy to convert between the 3. And then percent is like a fraction, but the denominator of that fraction is 0. Sorry, it's 100. And then you just take the numerator and you add the percent sign. And then a decimal is like when you fully divide the numerator by the denominator and you kind of do long division, which also show that later. And then some decimals kind of repeat or terminate, so not all of them are really nice. For example, like the fraction 1/3 is 0.33 repeating on forever. The 0.33 repeating on forever is just infinite threes, right? It's like constantly repeating. That's like an example of a decimal that constantly repeats. And then I can give you more examples later if you want. But just know how to switch between forms. So generally, some things just to note is that like 1/3 is 0.33 repeating forever. Like 2/3, if we multiply by that by 2, is just 0.66 repeating forever. So that's just some like good things to know. So now we're just gonna move on to kind of conversions, and how to kind of convert between each of these. So if we go from fractions to percentages, you have to make sure that the denominator is 100, and I'll teach you how to do that. Fractions to decimals, you want to divide the numerator by the denominator and kind of just do some type of long division, which I'll also show. So let's look at the fraction 1/4. Let's say that we want to convert it into a percent, right? Well, how do we do this? You have 1/4. Okay, so from 1/4, you can change the denominator, but that's a little tricky. We know that any number multiplied by 1 is itself, right? So this equals 1/4. And we also know that any number divided by itself is 1, right? So if I have like, 2 divided by 2, that equals 1. Or if you have like 3 divided by 3, that also equals 1, right? So then you can kind of have 1 be any number divided by any number. So we can write out 1 equals like 25/25. And you're like, why 25? I'll tell you in a second. Okay. So then if we have 1 right out of 25/25, we can rewrite this to equal 1/4 times 25/25. So this kind of goes into like multiplying fractions, I guess. But how you multiply fractions is that take the numerator, multiply by the other numerator, and this is all divided by the denominator multiplied by the other denominator. So in this case, this just equals 1 times 25 over 4 times 25. Okay, so then now 1 times 25, 1 times any number is itself, so this is just 25. And then 4 times 25 is 100. So, that's 25/100. And then we said that percents are just, fractions, but the denominator is 100. So 25/100, that equals 25%. So that's how we get from 1/4 to percent to 25%. Does that make sense? Anyone have any questions? Okay. If anyone has any questions, feel free to message, but not. That's kind of how. Okay, Jessica.
I don't get it.
Okay, which part? Do you know which part you don't understand, or do you just want me to kind of go over this?
Just go for it.
Okay. Do you understand that any fraction times 1 is itself? Does that part make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Does 1 equal 1 equal 25/25? Does that make sense? No? Yes.
Kinda.
Okay. So, we can say that, like, if you take a number, right? Like, let's just take 4, right? If we split 4 into 4 equal parts, then we get 4 1s, right? That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So then you can use this for any number. If we have 5, right? And you split 5 into 5 equal parts, well then you get 1 again, right? Because each part is 1. So any number, when you split it, like if we take 25 then, if we split 25 into 25 equal parts, then each part has a value of 1, right? Good. So you can say that for any number. So in this case, you can say 1 equals 25. If you see a line over here, that's a fraction sign, but you can also just say that that's like a dividing sign, right? Like 25 divided by 25. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I know.
Okay, perfect. So then we're trying to multiply fractions. So how do we multiply fractions? Well, like we said before, we have a numerator and then we have a denominator, right? Well, in this case, how you multiply fractions is that you multiply their two numerators. So in this case, you take 1 times 25, and then you divide that. So you take the line, and then you multiply the denominator. So 4 times 25, right? So you kind of go from 1 over 4 times 25 over 25, then you get 1 times 25 over 4 times 25, which ends up just, if you simplify that, that equals 25 over 100. Does that make more sense? Okay, good. So that's how you get to 25 over 100. Now, a percent, if you say something is like 3%, right? That equals 3 over 100. That's okay. So if I say something is 25 over 100, that means 25%. So that's how we got the final answer of 25%. Okay, good? Iffy still? Okay. Yeah, if something still doesn't make sense, that's totally fine. I can go over like more detail. I can like either email me or like I can totally explain it. But that's how you get like 25%. And then you can do decimals. So decimals are really interesting. I think the easiest way to think about this is that if you have a number like this, right? Like we got to 25 over 100. I'm sure we all know how we got there. If you notice that this is over 100, then that just equals 0.25. And how we know this is that, well, 1 over 100 equals 0.01. And if we add 25 of 0.01s, because that's what multiplication is, right? We times that by 25, well, that equals 0.25. And then like 1 over 10 equals 0.1. And then like I think you can tell by this pattern, like 1 over 1,000 equals 0.001, and etc. So the easiest way to kind of turn a fraction into a decimal is if you have the denominator be 100. Yeah. But another way to do it is you can also do a long division way. I'm just gonna make sure that we have enough time to discuss. Okay, yeah. I'm just gonna go through this pretty quickly. But another way you can do this is long division. So 1 over 4, right? Well, 1 divided by 4. Well, 1, you can also say that's 1.0, right? Because the point doesn't mean anything. But anything behind it also, right? So you can say that this is 1.0. Now you can kind of treat this like a 10, right? So how many times does 4 go into 10? Well, 4 goes into 10 2 times. Make sure that the decimal points line up. And then if you have 0.2 times 4, well, that equals 0.8. And I will get to any questions in a second. Give me a second, quick. But then you can just, this is just basic long division, right? So then 0.8, you have 0.2. Well, then you can add another 0 here. And that is just, that looks like 20, right? Well, then you can add a 5 over here. So then you get 0.20, which is 20 basically. And that equals 0. So this is going to be your final answer. And it's okay if this long division way doesn't make sense. If you understand it, that's good. But if you don't, that's really fine. Yes, Joanna?
So it's not really a question, but you know the first way, then the before that way, like the long, then like the other way besides the long division way, isn't that way basically like if you have like 0.25, like you know how 100 has like 2 zeros in it, and like it's out of 100 like a percent. Couldn't you just like move the decimal point twice to the right?
Yeah, so that's how you get from percents to decimal, which we'll talk about in another slide. But I'm glad that you thought ahead. That is very true. It's a very good way of thinking about it as well. But yeah, that is really smart. And this was just kind of from fractions to decimals and percents, and obviously we can change back and forth. And then, you know, another example is kind of 2/5. I did this kind of a similar way where, you know, 5 goes into 100 20 times. So I multiply the numerator and denominator by 20. So I'm basically still multiplying by 1, you know, but 20 over 20 equals 1. So then 2 times 20 over 5 times 20, which is equals 40 times 40 over 100, which equals 40%. Does this make like at least somewhat sense out of you? Okay, good. Now I'm just going to quickly go over converting from decimals. So decimals to percents, like we just said, you can move the decimal point 2 places to the right, which is also the same thing as just multiplying it by 100. And then decimals to fractions, write it out with the denominator being a factor of 10. This might not make sense, but I'll like explain it as best I can, right? So if we have 0.75, right, let's first go to percents. Well, then if we move the decimal points 2 points to the right, then you automatically just get 75%, right? So makes sense, hopefully, or like 0.6, right? If you move the decimal places 2 points to the right, we have 0.6, and then you have a 0 behind that, so it's 60%. Okay, so then we're trying to go to fractions. So how do we go from fractions? Well, like we said, we know that there are, you know, 2 places here, and 100 has 2 zeros. That would mean that that's just 75 over 100. And 75 over 100, well, we know that 75 and 100, we can take their greatest common divisor, GCD, which we know is 25, right? This one is, you could say it's 3 times 25 over, oh, that's ugly. Oh my god, sorry. 3 times 25 over 4 times 25. And since they have the common factor on top, 25 and 25, well, you still have to remember that this line is just a dividing sign, right? Well, then 25 and 25, you can just cancel that out, right? Because 25 divided by 25 is just equal to 1, which is equal to itself. So then you can write this out as 3/4. And now the greatest common divisor is 1, so you can't really simplify this farther. That's how you kind of get to 3. Hopefully that makes a bit more sense. It can be a little bit confusing. But I'm gonna go on to example 2, and then I can answer any questions if you guys have questions. But example 2 basically says, well, if we have the decimal 0.6, right? There's one place over here. There's 1 0 and 10. So that's kind of how we know. So then you can do 6 over 10. And then 6 over 10, well, we know 6 is 2 times 3. And then 10 is 2 times 5. And then the 2's can cancel out, right? Because 2 divided by 2 is 1 itself. So that just equals 3 over 5. That's kind of how we get to simplifying these fractions, and we get over here. And then for the decimal place, to percentages, you can just multiply 0.6 by 100. Put that in your calculator if you want. But you just move decimal places 2 points to the right. And also just know that for any like number like 0.6, I could say 0.60, and that's the exact same thing. Like adding a 0 at the end after the decimal point. Just make sure it's after the decimal point. That doesn't change the number, right? Like this is the same thing as 0.6. There's no difference. Remember that. But just make sure that if you're adding zeros, add it behind the decimal point, not in front. Okay. Does anyone have any like burning questions? Again, if like this doesn't really make sense or you want me to explain something more detailed, I can always explain it after class. Yeah. Okay, so then if we go from percent to anything, right? Like percent to fraction. Well, then we can just write the percent over 100 and then the percent to decimal, move it to the left. So okay, 80%, right? Well, what does 80% mean? 80% means 80 over 100. And 80 over 100, through simplification, we can say that that equals 4/5. But 80 over 100 basically just equals 4 times 20 over 5 times 20. 20s cancel out, you get 4/5. Now, if we move this decimal, well, we divide it by 100, so then we can move the decimal points 2 places to the left, right? So before it's here, now you can move it once here, and then we can move it here. So then you get 0.80. And 0.80, like we said, just equals 0.8. Now, one thing about percents is that percents can have like a decimal, right? Like it could be 12.5%. So what does this mean? This means 12.5 over 100. But in a fraction, the numerator has to be a whole number, and the denominator also has to be a whole number. So this is actually not a right way to write it, right? Like you cannot write it this way. So how do we go from that to here? Well, like I said, you can multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same number, and that still remains equal. So you can have 12.5 times 10, right, to get rid of the decimal point, and that just equals 125. But if you multiply the numerator, you also have to multiply the denominator. So that would mean that's 1,125 over 100 times 10, which equals 1,000. So that might be a little bit confusing. It's okay if it is. But that's basically how you kind of get here. And then once you get here, you can just divide by as many numbers as you can to get to 1/8. Does that kind of make sense? Anyone have like, is anyone like really confused? None of this makes sense. Okay. So given all of this, I'm gonna skip the practice problems because we do not have time, unfortunately. But we can move on to, we can always do the practice problems like next time or something like that. But for word problems, here's some word problems, and I'll kind of just give a brief like how do I do this. So we can start off with like what is 20% of 60? Well, the easiest way of doing this is if we put this into decimal form, right? 20% we know is 0.2 or like 0.20. And then 20% of 60, like when you say some percent of another number, that means that you're multiplying them. So then you do 0.2 times 60, right? And then 0.2 times 60, well, you have 0.2 times, so then you have 120, right? But then you have one decimal point here, which means that there also has to be one decimal final number. So how we multiply decimals, this might be a little bit confusing, so apologies if it is. But if you have some number like 0.6, right, times 0.5, you can multiply 5 times 6, right, and then you get 30. But the thing that you have to realize is that there's 2 decimal points here, right? There's a 6 behind the point, and then there's a 5 behind the point, which means that in the final answer, given this, you also have to have 2 decimal points. That means there has to be a point in front of the 3 and a point in front of the 0. So you have to do like 0.30. That's how we multiply this. Could be a little confusing at first. It's okay if it is. But that's just something to note. And then if you have, I guess I'm trying to think of like a really good example of this, but like if you have like 0.2 times 0.3, right? Well, 2 times 3 equals 6, right? But then we only have one number here. But we have 2 decimal points, right? We have a 2 behind the point, and then we have a 3 behind the point. So how do we do this? Well, then you can put a 0 in front of the 6 as well, right? And then you can just do 0.06. That's kind of how you get there. Okay, that can be a little bit confusing, but we're not going to be really dealing too much of that. So I'm just going to go off the word problem. So another common word problem is like when you go to the mall, right? Or you're buying something and there's a sale, right? Like some percent off. So like in this case, if a shirt costs like $40, right? And it's on sale for 25% off. Well, then what's the price of the new shirt? Well, since 25% is off, right? We can calculate 25% of the old price. So 25% equals 0.25, and 0.25 times 40, which equals 10. So that would mean that there's a $10 discount. The $10 off, right? We subtract $10. So the new price is just $40 minus $10, which is how you get to $30. And then you can do, this is another type of word problem that's pretty common. It's like if 25% of a number is 9, what is the number? Well, how do you do this, right? You know that some number times 25%, which equals 0.25, equals 9. So if you want to find the number, then you can do 9 divided by 0.25, right? Like if we divide both sides by 0.25, then this side just equals 1. So then you can do 9 divided by 0.25. And then you can get that number equals 9 divided by 0.5. And you could put that into your calculator, and that just equals 36. Yeah. And then if you say this is a number, this kind of number is 30% of 0.8. That's similar to question 1. That's just 0.3, which is also equal to 30% times 80 is 24. Do these problems make sense? Does like how we get to the answer kind of make sense? Hopefully. Okay. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. We're gonna go through these practice, like we're just gonna skip through the practice because the code took a long time. And these are kind of just things that, you know, I hope that we can understand after this. So, fractions, decimals, and percents are kind of 3 different forms for representing like a whole. And you can kind of convert between them using simple rules, right? Like for decimal, you just divide the top by the bottom. And then for percents, just make sure that the denominator is 100 if you're using fractions, or you multiply by 100, multiply the decimal by 100. And then when you turn a percent to a fraction, right, you want to make sure that you simplify it, get rid of any the GCDs of those numbers. So yeah. And then decimals that repeat follow patterns and can be written as exact fractions. So I didn't really elaborate on this one, but like if you have some number that is constantly repeating, there's a way to turn that into a fraction. And if you guys are interested in that, I can explain that. But you guys would have to probably stay after for that to happen, just because. And then understanding how to switch between these 3 forms, decimals, fractions, and percents, is really important for solving like word problems like that we discussed. And yeah, that's all like the content for today. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. On the slides, there are some practice problems here, both word problems and just like conversion problems. And you guys can feel free to do that for practice. And if you guys have any questions about those, if you guys want to know the answers, feel free to just ask me. And the homework and the slides and the recording will be posted on Google Classroom if you have any more questions in the future. But yeah. Okay. Very good. Hopefully.
Thank you.
No problem. Feel free to stick around for questions if you have it. But if
Thank
don't,
you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.